What's up, Fackers? We are back with our Fantasy and Chill 101, counting down the top 101 fantasy football players for the 2020 season. Next up on the list, we have number 65, Evan Engram, tight end of the New York Giants. He is our sixth ranked tight end. Last year, he finished as tight end number 17. Okay, so some of his stats last year, he had 44 catches for 467 yards and 3 touchdowns on 68 targets. He scored 91.4 fantasy points, an average of 11.4 points per game. So Evan Engram does have the injury concerns. Over the last 2 seasons, he has missed 13 games. All right, so pretty close to half of the available games there that he's missed. Okay, we all know that I am pretty high on New York Giants offense this season.
Yep.
I've been burned by Evan Engram in the past, so I'm kind of conflicted here. 2 years ago, I had Engram. God, he was bad. I really regretted making that pick, especially where I took him. I took him way too early. Kind of broke my rule about tight ends there. But there are plenty of weapons in New York, and that's why I'm high on them this year. It also is going to affect his value a little bit, though, because I like Saquon. I like Darius Slayton. I like Sterling Shepard. I like Golden Tate as a number 3 receiver. You know, there's a bunch of guys that Danny Dimes can throw the ball to. So I don't know if he's always going to be heavily involved every week, but he definitely has the potential. And he showed that at the beginning of the year last year before he got hurt. The first 5 weeks of last season, he averaged 14.06 points per game, which is very good for a tight end. So he was right there. He was the number 2 tight end behind Austin Hooper those first 5 weeks. And then he got hurt, and it kind of all went downhill from there.
Yeah, I feel like we can almost just copy paste our last video on Hunter Henry and just every time we say Hunter Henry, just insert the words Evan Engram because very
Similar.
very similar, yeah. But I will agree with you on one thing that I if you're just comparing the offenses, I think the Giants offense is going to be a lot better than, I don't think there's a question at all. It's going to be a lot better than the Chargers offense is. There is some things that worry me. He did have surgery in the offseason, or actually not the offseason, last December. And he's not a lock to start week 1, but if I had to guess, he'd probably start week 1. So
What was his injury?
it was a Liz Frank surgery.
What did he have? Ooh,
Yeah, so it's not,
gosh,
it's
that's
not
a bad one.
it's not the one you want to hear, but
Damn foot
yeah.
plagues so many people.
You've seen
Lost the
like,
Texans a Super Bowl in 2011.
who was that?
Shaw went down with a Liz Frank
Okay, we
injury.
don't. Let's not compare. Let's not bring up
Hey,
Matt Schaub.
we talk about the Texans, but you go look at that 2011 season. We were right there with the best team in the league, and then he went down. T.J. Yates. How that story goes.
In the pick sixes game.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that split second, we might have won the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I guess some other things that worry me too is like you've already mentioned. There's Sterling Shepard there, Darius Slayton, Golden Tate, Saquon. But if he doesn't have that much games with Danny Dimes, but when he did play with Danny Dimes, he was averaging about 50 yards a game. The problem is he had one huge game where he had 113 yards last year. He had a total of 6 games with him, so that kind of inflated his yardage a little bit. But if you're getting about 50 yards from your tight end, that's 5 points a game, not including the receptions. I would take that. Plus, throwing a touchdown every now and then.
The thing that was so frustrating about him, last year I didn't pay as much attention to him because I didn't have him. But when I had him 2 years ago, he would have that big game like you talk about. But man, he is one of those tight ends that is just gonna put up some shitty weeks of like 2 and 3 points and just like
Yeah,
screw you.
I see one game here against Arizona last year. He had 1 reception for 5 yards. So
Yeah, like that's going back to the tight end conversation. There are so many the tight ends that do that, and it's so frustrating. That's why I don't want to sound like a broken record, but unless you have one of those top guys, it doesn't matter all that much
yeah,
which one of these Hunter Henry, Evan Engram. Next, we'll see about Darren Waller if he can do it again, because last year was his breakout year if he can be successful again. But I mean, there's say it all the time. So many of these guys, who's going to score the touchdown that week?
yeah. And also, we talk about value a lot. If you're just going based on value, I would say Evan Engram is more valuable than Hunter Henry right now because he is going about 20 spots after Hunter Henry is, which is
Okay.
kind of insane to think about. Like they're
Yeah.
pretty similar tight ends, and he's going 20 spots later. Like, I would much rather
It's
have
like
Evan Engram.
I was gonna say in the draft, if they had similar ADPs, I'd rather have Henry. But I think he's more consistent, and you want consistency,
Yeah,
especially out of the tight end. You're talking about 20 picks later, 2 rounds later, then yeah, it's got to be
yeah.
Ingram.
You got to take Engram at that point.
I wonder
Like,
what the reason is that they're so far separated there.
it could be the surgery that's happening, or just
I
however many
guess.
targets. I mean, you'll
I
see a
mean,
lot of ADPs.
Hunter Henry's not the definition of health.
No,
So
that's true. I mean, I expect Evan Ingram's ADP to go downward a little bit, or like it's higher in the draft as we get close to the draft day. Because right now these ADPs they could be fluctuated a lot. When news
here's
comes
the
out, it
thing:
changes.
I can pretty much guarantee you that Evan Engram will not be on my team. I don't see any point in the draft that I'm going to look up when there's still good running backs and wide receivers available. That I'm going to be like, man, I really want to add Evan Engram right here.
I mean, what if he falls to the 10th round? You said you're high on the Giants
I mean, if he
offense.
falls to the 10th round, that's one thing, but I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, especially with
10th
how
round,
our
you're targeting guys like we always say, like Higby. We obviously like Higby would be a guy. Maybe, well, Gronk wouldn't fall to the 10th round because of name value, but
yeah. So it's been a 2 out of 3 fantasy and chillers that have been burned by Evan Engram so far.
so he never really did anything for me. But at least last year, until he got hurt, he was very good.
Yeah, he was decent. Yeah, that's true. I don't know which round did he get drafted in?
Eighth.
8th. So yeah, I mean you're not getting value at him because he only played what 9 games,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
he's out
like
before the championship starts.
in the 8th round, if well, right now his ADP is the 8th round, right? Is that what you said?
87, so 9th round for
So
us.
the 9th round. Uh, Maybe then it would make sense, but if you're talking about 7th and 8th round, which I think he might jump up into that territory
Yeah,
when the
I expect
ADPs
him to
keep
be up there.
rolling in,
Yeah,
you have your starters. Those are your first guys off the bench, and those are very valuable rounds to make sure you grab solid guys there in the
yeah,
6th, 7th, 8th round. Like I said, I just don't see any situation where I'm going to pull the trigger on Evan Engram there.
no, yeah. He just falls in that middle ground tight end when in the like we talked about last episode with Hunter Henry. Like the drop off from your 8th round tight ends that are going to your 12th round tight ends that are going is not a huge difference. So you might as well just roll the dice with those 12th round tight ends.
I mean,
I guess one
we
more.
we know we went over the names last week or last episode, but Noah Fant, Austin Hooper, Mike Gesicki, Hayden Hurst, Hawkinson, Dallas
Yeah,
Goddard, Johnny Smarwin, like all those guys.
a lot of guys that could potentially have big seasons there. I will say, right before we started this episode, I saw this one article saying that their coach Joe Judge wants their offense to be similar to what Jason Garrett ran in Dallas when he was OC. And if we remember back then, when Jason Garrett was the OC or was running the plays, they were super run heavy. Like it was pretty much give the ball to Zeke and just let's see what happens. So it's not a good
I
sign
forgot
for a
that he was on the Giants now.
yeah. It's not a good sign for receiving. Well, if that could just be coach speak too, because we hear a lot of coaches say different things during the off season, and it
Right.
never actually pans out. Like when you got targets like Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, and Danny Dimes as a dual threat quarterback, you're not going to be handing the ball off to. It wouldn't be a bad strategy handing the ball off to Saquon Barkley every play, but who
Well,
knows?
even when Jason Garrett was calling the play, I mean, Jason Witten was very productive, so a tight end can be productive in this offense.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I still expect them to do better than the Chargers. Like we were comparing their offenses, so they have a lot more weapons there.
Kind of to wrap it up, I like the Giants' offense. I made that very clear. Evan Ingram, not so much. Unless some crazy situation happens where he falls just big time in the draft, he will not be on my team. Maybe he'll be on Matt's team. I don't know. Evan
Doubt it.
Ingram is our sixth ranked tight end, number 65 overall. Yeah.
Yep.